I thought my family was the one thing I could count on, but it turns out they'd been planning to stab me in the back for weeks, just because my grandmother loved me enough to leave me a roof over my head. My name is Mark, I'm 29, and until last Tuesday, I thought I had a pretty great relationship with my parents and my sister, Sarah. We had this big family trip to the Bahamas planned for months. It was supposed to be our healing trip after Grandma passed away last year. I'd already packed my bags, bought the sunscreen, and even finished all my work projects early so I could completely disconnect. Then the phone rang. It was Sarah. Her voice sounded off, fidgety. "Hey, Mark," she said, and I could practically hear her biting her nails on the other end. "Listen, about the Bahamas. Dad's got a massive emergency at the firm. Some audit or something. Anyway, we're going to have to postpone the whole trip indefinitely. Mom's devastated, but you know how Dad is. Work comes first." My heart sank. I'd been looking forward to this for so long. Indefinitely? "Sarah, I already took the time off. Can't we just push it back a week?" No, she snapped, her tone getting weirdly defensive. "It's a mess. Don't call Mom about it either. She's literally too upset to talk. We'll figure it out later, okay? Love you, bye." She hung up before I could even process it. I sat there in my living room, the living room of the beautiful, historic Victorian house Grandma left me, feeling a pit in my stomach. Something felt wrong. The energy at dinner the week before had been stiff, almost like they were hiding a secret, but I brushed off as grief. I decided to give them space. I spent the next 2 days moping around the house, feeling sorry for myself. But then, on Thursday morning, I opened Instagram. I saw it. A story from Sarah. A selfie at the airport gate, holding a mimosa with the caption, "Bahamas bound. Finally getting some peace and quiet with the favorites. Hashtag family first, hashtag no stress. The favorites." And I wasn't in the picture. Behind her, I could see my mom laughing, and my dad, the man supposedly drowning in an audit, checking his boarding pass. They didn't postpone the trip. They just uninvited me. And they did it with a lie. I sat on my sofa for a solid 10 minutes, staring at that glowing phone screen until it timed out and went black. My reflection in the dark glass looked pathetic, a guy sitting in a quiet, empty house while his entire family was 30,000 feet in the air, clinking glasses and celebrating my absence. The betrayal didn't just hurt, it felt calculated. Cold. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "If we're playing games, let's see what the score is." I went full detective mode. I'm not proud of it, but when your own mother masterminds a plot to ditch you, privacy goes out the window. I opened Sarah's Instagram again. She's one of those people who can't eat a fry without documenting it, and for once, I was grateful for her vanity. I took a screenshot of the airport selfie and started zooming in like a madman. In the background, past my dad's shoulder, was a digital departures board. It was blurry, but I could make out the flight number, FL 822. I hopped onto a flight tracker website. Destination NASA. Departure time, 10:15 a.m. They weren't just going to the Bahamas. They were already halfway there by the time I saw the post. Then I saw a second story. This one was a video of my mom, looking radiant in a wide-brimmed sun hat, laughing as she looked out the plane window. The caption read, "Finally we can talk freely. Some things are just too heavy to carry around everyone." Everyone. I muttered. My heart was pounding against my ribs. Everyone meant me. I started scrolling back through our family group chat from last month. The weird energy I'd felt? It was all there in black and white. Short answers. Drop calls. That time I invited them over for dinner at the Victorian house, and my mom made a snarky comment about how it must be nice to live in a museum for free while your sister struggles with rent. The house. It always came back to the house. Grandma had left this place to me because I was the only one who actually spent time with her in her final years. I mowed her lawn, I fixed her leaking pipes, and I sat with her through every chemo treatment. Sarah and my parents? They showed up for holidays and complained about the old house smell. But the moment the will was read and they found out this $500,000 Victorian gem was mine, and only mine, the old house smell suddenly smelled like a lottery when they'd been cheated out of. I realized then that this trip wasn't a vacation. It was a summit. They were off on a tropical island specifically to discuss me and my inheritance without having to look me in the eye. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a cold, sharp clarity. They wanted space for me? Fine. I was about to give them all the space in the world. I spent the next 3 hours spiraling. You know that feeling when you realize you've been the punchline of a joke you didn't even know was being told? That was me, pacing the hardwood floors of Grandma's foyer, the very floors my mother once called outdated and drafty. I needed more than just Instagram stories. I needed to know why. I reached out to my cousin Leo. He's always been the family outlier, the one who stays out of the drama, but here's everything because he's approachable. I called him, my hands literally shaking, as I held the phone. Hey Leo, quick question. I started, trying to keep my voice from cracking. Did you hear anything about the Bahamas trip being canceled? There was a long, heavy pause on the other end. I heard him sigh. Mark, man, I was wondering if you were going to call. I saw Sarah's posts. I thought maybe you guys made up at the last second or something. Made up? For what? I didn't even know we were fighting, I snapped. Look, Leo lowered his voice. I wasn't supposed to say anything, but your mom was venting to my parents at the barbecue last Sunday. She was pretty worked up, Mark. She told everyone that it wasn't fair that you got the Victorian house while Sarah is still cramped in that 2-bedroom apartment. She said the house was a family asset and that you being there made her feel like a guest in her own mother's home. My stomach did a somersault. A guest? She hasn't lived here in 30 years. I know, man, but she convinced your dad and Sarah that they needed a break from the tension. She told them that if they took you on the trip, all anyone would do is argue about the will, and they deserved a vacation from the inheritance drama. She basically framed you as the villain who stole the family's retirement fund. The betrayal finally had a face, my mother's. She hadn't just lied, she had systematically poisoned my father and sister against me so she could enjoy a pina colada without the guilt of looking at the son she was resentful of. She wanted me out of the picture so they could process their feelings? Fine, they could process them. But they were going to do it from a distance. I looked around the house. The crown molding, the stained glass windows, the history. This wasn't just a building, it was my home, and Grandma gave it to me because she knew I'd cherish it. My family? They saw it as a bank account with a roof. I sat down at my laptop. If they wanted to treat this house like a family asset that I stole, I was going to show them exactly what a real commercial asset looked like. My blood was cold. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver, but the kind that makes you precise. If my mother wanted to treat Grandma's legacy like a commodity, then I was going to give her a masterclass in business. I spent the next 6 hours fueled by nothing but black coffee and pure, unadulterated spite. I didn't just want to be mad, I wanted to be effective. The Victorian house was a masterpiece. It had 6 bedrooms, original clawfoot tubs, and a wraparound porch that overlooked the valley. It was the gathering place. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every we're just dropping by Sunday, this was the hub. My family assumed that even though I owned the deed, they owned the access. They figured they could ignore me, lie to me, and exclude me, but still show up in December to hang stockings on my fireplace. Not anymore, I whispered, opening a new browser tab. I didn't just look at Airbnb. I looked at high-end property management firms. I reached out to a local agency that specialized in heritage stays. Within 2 hours, I had a representative on the phone. Mr. Miller? Your property is stunning, the agent, a woman named Elena, said after I sent her the photos. In this market, a historic Victorian, during peak foliage season, we could list this for $800 a night, minimum. We have a corporate retreat looking for a 3-month block starting next week. My heart hammered. Next week. That was the day after my family was scheduled to fly back from their secret vacation. Let's do it, I said. Send the contract. I want it signed and binding by tonight. I want the cleaning crews and the photographers here tomorrow morning. Are you sure, Mark? She asked, sensing the edge in my voice. Usually, owners like to keep a few blackout dates for family holidays. No blackout dates, I replied, my voice steady. The house is officially open for business. 365 days a year. I wasn't just renting a house. I was closing the doors to their sanctuary. I was taking the one thing they felt entitled to, the family home, and turning it into a commercial product they couldn't touch without a credit card and a security deposit. By 3 a.m., the digital signature was sent. The house was no longer Grandma's place. It was the Victorian Heritage Suite. Now, all I had to do was wait for their plane to land. I had the flight tracker pulled up on my second monitor. Flight FLA-22 was currently over the Atlantic, cruising peacefully, while the people inside it had no idea they were about to become tourists in their own history. Friday morning hit me like a physical weight. I woke up on the couch to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly. My eyes were crusty, and my brain felt like it had been through a blender, but the moment I saw the screen, I was wide awake. It was a text from my mom. A photo of a tropical drink sitting on a white sand beach with a turquoise ocean backdrop. Thinking of you, Mark. So sorry again about the trip being canceled. We're all just moping around the house today. Dad is still buried in those audit papers, and Sarah and I are just reading. It's so boring without you. We'll make it up to you with a big family dinner at Grandma's when we're back, okay? Love you. I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. Moping around the house. Boring without me. The level of casual, effortless lying was actually impressive. She was literally standing in paradise, typing a lie with one hand and probably waving down a waiter with the other. I didn't reply. I couldn't. If I did, I'd scream through the text. Instead, I opened the front door to let in the professional photography crew Elena had sent over. They were efficient, moving through the house with tripods and soft boxes, capturing the essence of the Victorian charm. Wow, the lead photographer said, adjusting a lens in the dining room. This place is a gold mine. The original woodwork. People pay a premium for this authentic vibe. It feels so lived in, so full of family history. Yeah, I said, leaning against the doorframe of the kitchen where my mother used to bake Christmas cookies. It was. Now it's just a premium asset. He looked at me weirdly, but I didn't care. While they were shooting, my sister Sarah decided to double down on the gaslighting. She sent a throwback photo to our family group chat, a picture of me and her as kids in front of this very house. Sarah, missing the good old days. Can't wait to get back to the Victorian next week and just collapse. Traveling is so stressful, even if it's just for work errands for Dad. Mark, make sure the guest room is ready for me. I'm going to need a serious nap when we land Sunday night. My heart sank, then hardened. She was already marking her territory. She was already planning her collapse in a house she'd helped trick me out of visiting. She thought she could play the exhausted sister card to get a free stay in the house she envied. The guest room won't be ready for you, Sarah, I whispered to the chat I hadn't replied to yet. But the Heritage Suite is available for $850 a night, plus tax. I watched the photographers finish up and upload the shots to the agency's portal. By 2 p.m., the listing was live. Within 20 minutes, the first guest notification popped up. A corporate booking for the entire month of November. The gathering place was officially booked. No Thanksgiving. No Christmas. No nap for Sarah. I looked at the flight tracker. They were still in the Bahamas, blissfully unaware that the locks were about to be changed. The transformation didn't just happen on paper, it was happening in the hallways. By Saturday morning, the house felt less like a home and more like a high-end boutique hotel. I spent the day removing personal photos from mantle, the one of my dad teaching me to fish, the one of Sarah's graduation, and the one of my mom and grandma at the garden club. I packed them into a cardboard box. Each photo felt like a heavy stone. I wasn't just clearing shelf space, I was clearing the emotional debris of people who didn't respect me enough to tell me the truth. That's when my phone vibrated. Dad calling. My heart did a nervous skip. My dad was usually the quiet one, the one who went along with my mother's visions, just to keep the peace. I took a deep breath and swiped up. Hey Dad, how's the audit going? I couldn't help the sarcasm dripping from my voice. Mark, he said, and I could hear the rhythmic sound of waves in the background. He wasn't even trying to hide it. Listen, son, your mother she's a bit worried. She said you haven't been answering the group chat. Are you okay? You're not still brooding about the trip, are you? Brooding, I repeated, pacing the empty dining room. Dad, Sarah told me the trip was postponed because of a work emergency for you. Are you at the office right now? There was a long, awkward silence. I could almost hear him looking over his shoulder to see if my mom was listening. Look, Mark, things got complicated. Your mother just felt like we all needed some breathing room after the funeral and the will. She thought it would be better if we had some time to ourselves to, process things. And by process things, you mean enjoy a 5-star resort while lying to my face. Don't be like that, he sighed, his voice taking on that defensive, weary tone he always used when he knew he was wrong. It's just a vacation. We'll be back Sunday night. We're actually planning to come straight to your place from the airport. Your mother wants to cook a reconciliation dinner. She's already talking about making that pot roast you like. A reconciliation dinner in my house, with food she decides to cook after she lied to me? I felt a laugh bubbling up, but it wasn't a happy one. Dad, that sounds lovely. But there's a small problem. What problem? The house is booked, I said, my voice dead calm. Booked? For what? Did you invite friends over? No, Dad. It's booked for a corporate retreat. The contract is signed. The cleaning crew is coming in tomorrow morning to neutralize the space. You guys won't be able to stay here. In fact, you won't be able to drop by at all. Mark, what are you talking about? It's the family home. It's a Victorian heritage suite now, I said. And per the contract, unauthorized guests are a violation of the rental agreement. I'll see you when you land, Dad. Or rather, I'll see your email. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was the one holding the cards. Saturday night was the longest night of my life. I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the flight tracker, watching that little airplane icon crawl across the blue expanse of the Atlantic. They were currently somewhere over the ocean, probably sipping complimentary champagne, and congratulating themselves on how smoothly their little deception had gone. I sat in Grandma's old study, the only room I hadn't neutralized yet. I had a glass of bourbon in one hand and my laptop in the other. The silence of the house was deafening. It felt like the walls were holding their breath. This was the place where we'd spent every Christmas morning. This was where my mom had cried when she got the call that Grandma had passed. And now, because of their greed and their need for space, it was about to become a stranger's temporary residence. I opened my email. I had a draft saved. To Mom, Dad, Sarah. CC. Uncle Jim, estate mediator. Subject: update regarding the Victorian property and future family gatherings. I looked at the cursor blinking. My heart was thumping so hard I could feel it in my throat. I wasn't just sending an email, I was blowing up a bridge. Dear family, I started typing. I hope the Bahamas treated you well. Since you all needed space to process your feelings about Grandma's will, I've decided to give you exactly that. Permanent space. I attached the signed property management contract. I attached the screenshots of Sarah's Instagram stories. I even attached a photo of the new digital keypad I just installed on the front door. As of 9 p.m. tomorrow, this house is no longer a private residence. It is a legally registered short-term rental. I have signed a binding, non-refundable one-year management contract. This means the house is booked solid for the next 3 months by a corporate entity. There will be no reconciliation dinner. There will be no guest room for Sarah. And there will be no Thanksgiving here. I paused. My finger hovered over the send button. I thought about my mom's text, the one about moping on the beach. I thought about my dad's weary, defensive voice. They thought they could treat me like a child. They could sit in the corner while the adults talked. They thought they could lie to me, exclude me, and then come home to my hearth to forgive me for owning the house they wanted. I didn't just want them to be locked out. I wanted them to understand that their actions had stripped this place of its home status. If they wanted a hotel, I'd give them a hotel. I looked at the flight tracker again. They were 2 hours from landing. I hit send. The digital whoosh sound of the email leaving my outbox felt like a gunshot in the quiet house. It was 8:47 p.m. They would be switching their phones off airplane mode in exactly 13 minutes. The boom moment was officially in motion. The flight tracker changed from a moving icon to a static green checkmark, landed. I sat in the dark of the living room, the only light coming from the blue glow of my laptop screen. I knew exactly what was happening at Gate B12. They were unbuckling their seatbelts, reaching for the overhead bins, and, most importantly, switching their phones off airplane mode. 1 minute passed. 2. Then the floodgates opened. My phone didn't just buzz, it screamed. It was a synchronized symphony of pings, vibrations, and ringtones. Sarah, 8:59 p.m. Mark? What is this email? Is this a joke? Mom, 9 p.m. Mark, answer your phone right now. You cannot be serious. A corporate retreat. We are in the taxi on our way to the house. Turn that keypad off. Dad, 9:02 p.m. Son, you're overreacting. We lied about the trip to keep the peace, not to lose our home. Call me. I didn't call. I watched the front porch through the Ring camera on my phone. About 40 minutes later, a yellow cab pulled up to the curb. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I saw them get out. My mom looked exhausted but furious, her son hat drooping. Sarah was clutching her designer carry-on, already stabbing at her phone screen. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years during the flight. They marched up the steps I just scrubbed that morning, and my mom reached for the door handle. It didn't budge. She tried her old key. It didn't even fit into the new deadbolt. She stared at the digital keypad, her face turning a shade of red I'd never seen before. She looked directly into the camera lens, knowing I was watching. "Mark," she yelled, her voice echoing in the quiet neighborhood. "Open this door this instant. We have groceries in the trunk. It's nearly 10 o'clock. Stop this childish nonsense." I pressed the microphone button on the app. My voice came out of the porch speaker, cool and detached. "The Victorian Heritage Suite is currently undergoing a deep clean for the 9 a.m. check-in, Mom. Per the insurance policy, no unauthorized personnel are allowed on site. There's a Marriott 3 miles down the road. I suggest you head there." Sarah let out a high-pitched shriek of frustration. "Mark, my stuff is in there. My winter clothes, my jewelry." "It's all boxed up in the garage, Sarah," I replied. "I'll text you a one-time code for the garage side door. You have 10 minutes to grab your boxes and leave. If you try to enter the main house, the security alarm triggers a police dispatch automatically." The silence that followed was heavy. They stood there on the porch of the house they thought they owned by divine right, realizing for the first time that I wasn't the quiet kid anymore. I was the landlord. Watching them on the Ring camera felt like watching a movie of someone else's life. My mother was pacing the porch, her expensive sandals clicking rhythmically against the wood, while Sarah was literally kicking the base of the door. My dad just stood by the taxi, looking at the meter as it clicked higher and higher, his shoulders slumped in a way that almost made me feel a pang of guilt. Almost. Then I remembered the beach selfie. "No stress," she had written. "Mark, this is criminal," my mother shrieked at the doorbell camera. "I am your mother. This is Grandma's house. You can't just lock us out like we're strangers." "Actually, Mom," I said, my voice crackling through the tiny speaker. "Legally, I can. Grandma left the house to me. You left me out of the family vacation. I'm just following your lead, taking some space to process my feelings. Now, the garage code is 4-4-9-2. Grab your boxes and go. The taxi is waiting." I watched them shuffle toward the garage. It was humiliating for them, and honestly, it was heartbreaking for me. I didn't want this. I wanted a family that didn't lie to me. But you don't get the family you want. You get the one you have. About 20 minutes later, the taxi pulled away. The red taillights faded into the distance, leaving the street in total silence. My phone buzzed. It was a formal email from Uncle Jim. Uncle Jim is my dad's older brother and the executor of Grandma's estate. He's a no-nonsense guy who played college football and now runs a construction firm. He's the only person my mother is actually afraid of. "Mark," the email read, "I've just received a very frantic, very loud phone call from your mother from a lobby of a Marriott. She's claiming you've stolen the family home and turned it into a hotel. I've seen your CC'd email with the contracts. We need to talk. I'm coming over tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't call them back tonight. Just breathe." I leaned my head back against the wall. Uncle Jim was coming. This was the moment where the business decision met the family's moral outrage. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the dark, watching the empty street. I felt like a king in a castle, but the drawbridge was up, the moat was full of sharks, and I was the only person left inside. Around 2 a.m., a text came in from a number I didn't recognize. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You're going to regret this, Mark. You just traded your family for a rental check. I hope the money keeps you warm at night because we're done." It was from my mother. She'd used the hotel's phone or a burner. The mask was officially off. The reconciliation dinner was dead. The war had just begun. Sunday morning arrived with a cold, pale sun. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours. The house felt different, hollower. The neutral scent of the industrial cleaning products the crew had used early that morning had replaced the lingering smell of Grandma's lavender sachets. It was a business now. At exactly 10 a.m., Uncle Jim's heavy truck pulled into the driveway. He didn't ring the bell. He just stood on the porch, looking at the digital keypad with a grimace. I let him in. He walked into the foyer, his boots thudding on the hardwood. He didn't say a word at first. He just looked around at the boxes stacked near the door and the lack of personal photos on walls. "So," he said, turning to face me, "you really did it. You turned the hub into a Hilton." "I turned a liability into an asset, Jim," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "They lied to me. They went to the Bahamas to talk about how to get this house away from me. I just made sure there was no house for them to get." Jim sighed and sat down at the kitchen island. "Your mother spent the last 3 hours on the phone with me. She's talking about suing. She's talking about undue influence over Grandma's will. She's a whirlwind of fire and brimstone right now, Mark." "Let her sue," I snapped. Grandma was sharp as a tack until the day she died. She left me this house because she knew Mom and Sarah would sell it within a month to buy a condo or a new car. I'm the only one who wanted to keep it. And are you keeping it? Jim asked, raising an eyebrow. Because from where I'm sitting, you're renting it out to strangers. How is that different from what they would have done? That stung. I'm keeping the deed. I'm keeping the history. I'm just charging the people who disrespected me an entry fee if they ever want to see it again. Jim leaned forward. Mark, look at me. I'm not saying you're wrong to be angry. What they did, the lie, the trip, it was low. It was real low. But you've just declared war. You realize that, right? There's no Happy Christmas after this. There's no Sunday brunch. You've replaced your family with a contract. They replaced me with a no-stress vacation, Jim. They started the war. I'm just the one who finished it. Jim looked at his phone. Well, you might want to brace yourself. Your father is downstairs in the truck. He wouldn't come up unless I checked the vibe first. He's devastated, Mark. Not angry like your mother. Just broken. My heart did a slow, painful roll in my chest. My dad. The man who went along with the lie because he was too weak to stand up to my mother. Tell him to come up, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But tell him he's the only one invited. If Mom or Sarah step foot on this lawn, I'm calling the cops. My dad walked in looking like a ghost. He didn't have my mother's fire or my sister's indignation. He just looked small. He stayed by the door, refusing to sit down, his eyes darting around the foyer as if he were looking for the home that used to be here. Mark, he started, his voice cracking. I didn't want the lie. I told your mother it was a bad idea. I told her you'd find out. But you went anyway, Dad, I said, leaning against the kitchen counter to keep my hands from shaking. You got on the plane. You sat on the beach. You watched them post those photos knowing I was sitting here thinking you were in an emergency audit. You chose her comfort over my dignity. He looked down at his shoes. She's been so bitter, Mark. Ever since the will reading. She stays up at night talking about how Grandma punished her by giving you the house. I thought if I just gave her this one trip, this one bit of space she kept asking for, she'd get it out of her system. I thought we'd come back, and things would go back to normal. Normal is gone, Dad. I've signed a year-long lease with a management company. There are people coming in tomorrow who don't know who Grandma was, and they're going to sleep in her room. And the reason they're doing that is because I can't trust my own blood to sit at her table without plotting against me. My dad finally looked up, and I saw tears in his eyes. She's talking about a lawyer, Mark. She's at the hotel right now with Sarah, making a list of every erratic thing you've done in the last 5 years. They want to prove you weren't of sound mind when you pressured Grandma. It's getting ugly. Really ugly. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. Let them. I have the medical records. I have the logs of every time I took Grandma to the doctor while Mom was at the spa. If she wants to drag Grandma's name through the mud to get a paycheck, she can try. But she'll be doing it from a courtroom, not from my living room. I'm not on her side with this, he whispered. That stopped me. What? I told her this morning, Dad said, his voice gaining a tiny bit of strength. I told her if she files that suit, I'm moving out. I can't do it anymore, Mark. The lying, the jealousy, it's eating us alive. I came here to tell you I'm sorry. Not manager to owner sorry. Just, Dad, sorry. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, tarnished key. It was his old spare. He set it on the counter. I don't think I should have this anymore, he said. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, the anger flickered out, replaced by a deep, hollow ache. My dad was giving up. He was choosing me, but in doing so, he was admitting that our family was officially shattered beyond repair. Dad left the house in a silence that felt heavier than the shouting. I stared at that tarnished key on the counter for a long time. It was the white flag I'd wanted, but it felt more like a tombstone. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a call or a group chat message. It was a private DM from Sarah. Mark, can we talk? Just us. I'm at a cafe down the street from your place. Mom is back at the hotel losing her mind, and Dad, well, Dad is MIA. Please. I have things you need to hear. My first instinct was to block her. Sarah has always been Mom's shadow, the mini-me, who learned early on that if she played along with Mom's drama, she got rewarded. But the phrase, things you need to hear, is a powerful bait. I met her at a small bakery 3 blocks away. She looked different, no airport glam, no fake smile for the gram. She looked terrified. Mark, thank God, she whispered as I sat down. She didn't try to hug me. She knew better. Look, Mom is going off the deep end. She's not just talking about a lawyer. She's already called a private investigator. She wants to find dirt on you to prove you're an unfit owner. I lean back, a cold smile on my face. Good luck. I pay my taxes, I don't have a record, and I spent my weekends cleaning Grandma's gutters while you were at brunch. What's she going to find? That I'm boring. It's not just that. Sarah leaned in, her voice trembling. She has a recording. From the night Grandma died. You and Grandma were alone in the room for 20 minutes before the nurses came in. Mom is telling everyone you coerced her into signing a final codicil in those final moments. My blood turned to ice. That's a lie. Grandma was unconscious. I was just holding her hand and reading her that poetry book she liked. There was no signing anything. I know that. Sarah hissed. I was in the hallway. I know you didn't do it. But Mom is desperate. She's already spent her imaginary inheritance. She put a down payment on a luxury SUV and booked a European cruise for next spring, thinking she could just convince you to sell the house or buy her out. The pieces clicked. The Bahamas trip wasn't just for space. It was a celebration for a victory she hadn't even won yet. She was spending my money, Grandma's money, before the body was even cold in the ground. So why are you telling me this, Sarah? I asked, eyeing her suspiciously. Why betray the Queen Mother now? Sarah looked down at her latte, her hands shaking. Because the cruise? The SUV? She put them in my name, Mark. She used my credit score because hers is trashed from some investment she made last year. If she doesn't get that house money, I'm the one who goes bankrupt. I'm the one whose life is ruined. She looked up at me, eyes brimming with tears. I'll testify for you. I'll tell the truth about the Bahamas lies and the recording. I'll be your star witness if you just help me with the debt she put me in. I looked at my sister, the person who had stood on my porch 12 hours ago kicking my door, and I realized she wasn't sorry. She was just scared. She wasn't choosing me. She was choosing her credit score. I sat there in that quiet bakery, looking at my sister across the table. For a split second, I saw the little girl who used to hide in Grandma's garden with me. But then I looked at her hands, clutching an expensive phone, shaking not with grief, but with the sheer terror of financial ruin. She wasn't there for a reconciliation. She was there for a bailout. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous level. You lied to me about the trip. You laughed about being the favorites while I was sitting in an empty house. You stood on my porch and called me a thief. But now that Mom's greed has put a noose around your neck, suddenly you're my star witness. Mark, please, she whimpered. I didn't have a choice. You know how Mom is. She's a steamroller. If I didn't go along with it, she would have cut me off too. Being cut off by a liar is a gift, Sarah. I just learned that the hard way. I leaned in closer. Here's the deal. I'm not paying your debt. I'm not cleaning up the mess you made by being Mom's accomplice. You chose to sign those papers for the SUV and the cruise. That's on you. Sarah's face went pale. Mark, I'll lose everything. My credit will be destroyed. Then I guess you'll have a lot of space to process your feelings about that, I snapped. But I'll give you one way out. If you go to Uncle Jim tonight, not me, but Jim, and you give him a signed, notarized statement detailing everything. The fake audit lie Mom's plan to sue me, the fake recording she's threatening me with, and the fact that she's been spending money she doesn't have. If you do that, I won't press charges for the damage you did to my front door last night. That's it, she gasped. That's all you're offering. That's the only hand I'm holding out, Sarah. Take it or drown with her. Because tomorrow morning, I'm meeting with my own lawyer to file a restraining order against Mom. If your name is on her side of the paperwork, you're going down with the ship. I stood up, leaving my coffee untouched. You have until 6 p.m. to call Jim. After that, I'm done being the nice brother. As I walked out, I didn't look back. I felt a strange mix of power and absolute exhaustion. I was dismantling my family piece by piece, but they were the ones who provided the explosives. I headed back to the Victorian house. The first guests, the corporate team, were due to arrive in less than 12 hours. I had to make sure the Heritage Suite was perfect. I had to make sure that for the first time in 50 years, this house didn't feel like it belonged to the Millers anymore. I was turning the key on my old life, and I was doing it without a single regret. Monday morning felt like the season finale of a show I never wanted to star in. At 8:30 a.m., a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. These were the corporate guests, a team of architects here for a week-long retreat. They were looking for inspiration and heritage. I stood on the porch, wearing my best professional smile, ready to hand over the digital codes. But then, the screech of tires shattered the professional atmosphere. A beat-up taxi, the same one from the night before, slammed to a halt behind the SUV. My mother jumped out before it even fully stopped. She wasn't wearing a sun hat today. She was wearing her Warpath outfit, a sharp blazer, oversized sunglasses, and a look of pure, unhinged desperation. "Stop. Don't get out of the car," she screamed at the bewildered architects. She ran toward the porch, waving her arms like a maniac. "This house is under legal dispute. This man is a fraud. He's elder-abusing his own family." The architects stayed in their car, windows rolled up, looking at me with wide eyes. My heart plummeted. This was her last-ditch effort, a public scene to scare off the business and ruin the contract. "Mom, get off the property," I said, my voice low and trembling with rage. I stepped down to the bottom stair, blocking her path. "Or what?" she spat, her face inches from mine. She smelled like hotel coffee and bitterness. "You're going to call the cops on your own mother? Go ahead. Let them see you dragging me off the porch of the house my mother built. Let the neighbors see who you really are." She turned to the SUV and pounded on the window. "He's a thief. He tricked a dying woman. There's no insurance here. You aren't safe." "That's enough," a deep voice boomed from the sidewalk. We both froze. Uncle Jim was standing there, holding a thick manila envelope. Behind him, leaning against his truck, was Sarah. She looked like she had been crying for 10 hours straight, but she was holding a notarized document in her hand. "Jim, stay out of this," my mother yelled. "He's destroying the family." "No, Martha," Jim said, his voice unusually quiet and cold. "You did that when you used your daughter's credit to buy a car you couldn't afford on a dead woman's dime. I have Sarah's statement right here. I also have a call log from Grandma's nurse from the night she passed. She's willing to testify that Mark never asked for a pen, let alone a signature." My mother's face went from red to a ghostly, sickly white. She looked at Sarah. You went to him? After everything I did for you?" "You didn't do it for me, Mom." Sarah shouted from the sidewalk, her voice cracking. "You did it to me. I'm $40,000 in debt because of your celebration. I'm done lying for you." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother looked around at the house she couldn't enter, the brother-in-law who held the truth, the daughter who had finally turned, and the son she had treated like an obstacle. The architects, sensing the shift, slowly began to step out of their vehicle. "Is there a problem, Mr. Miller?" the lead architect asked, looking at my mother as if she were a stray animal. I looked at my mother one last time. The fire was gone. Only the ashes of her greed were left. "No problem," I said, making eye contact with her. "Just a trespasser who was just leaving. Right, Martha?" She didn't say a word. She turned, walked back to the taxi, and got in. She didn't look back. As the cab pulled away, I felt the last thread of our relationship snap. It didn't make a sound, but it was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. The architects are currently in the dining room, discussing load-bearing walls and original crown molding. To them, this is a workspace. To me, it's a sanctuary that I had to burn down to save. After the taxi pulled away with my mother inside, Uncle Jim stayed behind for a bit. He didn't offer a hug or a good job. He just patted the porch railing and said, "She's going to live with her sister in the city. Your dad, he's moving into a small apartment near the office. He needs to find himself again, Mark. Don't be too hard on him, but don't let him back in until he's earned it." Sarah left with Jim. She's still facing a mountain of debt, and while I'm not paying it off, I did agree to let her work as a property coordinator for my management firm, under strict supervision. It's her chance to pay back what she stole from her own future, one rental booking at a time. As for me, I don't live in the Victorian house anymore. I moved into a modest apartment across town. I realized I couldn't sleep in a place where every corner reminded me of a lie. But I still own it. Every month, a substantial check hits my bank account, the inheritance my mother was so desperate to touch. I'm using it to set up a trust fund in Grandma's name for local historical preservation. She would have loved that. The family group chat is dead. Deleted. My mother blocked me on everything, which is honestly the best gift she's given me in years. My dad calls once a week. We don't talk about the Bahamas. We don't talk about the house. We talk about the weather and the local sports scores. It's hollow, and it's awkward, but it's honest. And honesty is the only currency I accept now. Last night, I drove by the house. The lights were on, and I could see the guests through the windows, laughing and sharing a meal. For a second, I felt a sting of bitterness. That should be us. That should be my family. But then, I remembered the no-stress selfie. I remembered the locked door, and the fake audit. I kept driving. I've learned that family isn't a birthright, it's a behavior. If you treat your people like chess pieces, don't be surprised when they flip the board. I'm 29 years old, I'm the owner of a historic landmark, and I'm finally truly alone. And for the first time in my life, that feels like a victory.